Hello students, your board exams are right around the corner, so today we're going to do a complete revision of one of history's most important chapters, the rise of nationalism in Europe. My goal is to break it all down, step by step, so your revision becomes super clear and effective.
So here's our game plan. We are going to move through the chapter in 6 main parts. We'll start with the basic idea of what a nation-state even is, and we'll follow the entire story, right up to how countries like Germany and Italy were formed. Following this timeline really helps you connect the dots, which is exactly what you need for your exams.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning. Before all the big revolutions and wars, the idea of a nation-state wasn't really a thing. It was just an idea. And the chapter, very interestingly, begins not with a historical event, but with a dream that was captured in a famous painting.
This is that dream, painted by Frederick Souriau back in 1848. Now look closely. You can see this long line of people from all over Europe and America. Each group has its own flag, its own costume, and they are all marching past the Statue of Liberty. And look here, on the ground, you see all the shattered remains of crowns and symbols of absolute rule. This wasn't real, of course. It was a utopian vision of a world made up of free, democratic nations.
In that painting really captures the main idea of this whole chapter, nationalism. So what is it? At its heart, nationalism is simply a feeling of belonging, a sense of we-ness. It's a shared identity based on a common history or culture that makes a group of people want their own country, their own nation-state. Getting this definition right is a scoring point, as it's the foundation for everything else and a perfect way to start your answers.
So, if Souriau's painting was the dream, where did this idea of nationalism first spark into reality? Well, the answer to that is the French Revolution of 1789. This is the moment that is considered the first clear expression of nationalism in Europe. The French revolutionaries knew exactly what they were doing. To create a feeling of unity, they introduced some really powerful ideas. Things like la patrie, which means the fatherland, and le citoyen, the citizen. These weren't just words. They made people feel like they were part of one community with equal rights. They even created a new flag, the tricolor, and made laws uniform for everyone. Remember to use these terms, la patrie and the citoyen, in your answers. It really shows the examiner that you understand the concept deeply. And then, of course, Napoleon enters the picture. Now, it's a little funny because he actually got rid of democracy in France, but his administrative reforms, especially his civil code of 1804, also known as the Napoleonic Code, were incredibly modern. It established equality before the law, secured the right to property, and got rid of all privileges based on birth. As Napoleon's armies conquered Europe, they took these revolutionary ideas with them.
Now here's another keyword you absolutely must know for your exams, Zollverein. This was basically a customs union started by Prussia in 1834. What it did was remove all the internal tariff barriers and reduce the number of currencies among the German states. This made trade much easier and created a sense of economic unity. This is a perfect example of what we call economic nationalism, and it really paved the way for political unification later on.
Okay, so what happened after Napoleon was defeated in 1815? Well, Europe didn't just go back to the way it was. Instead, a huge ideological battle began. It was a clash between two completely opposite forces, the old order, known as the conservatives, and the new thinkers, the revolutionaries. Let's break this down. On one side, you had the conservatives. Think of figures like the Austrian Chancellor, Duke Metternich. They wanted to restore the old monarchies, they supported the church, and they absolutely hated criticism, so they imposed strict censorship. On the other side were the liberal nationalists. These were mainly the educated middle-class folks who wanted individual freedom, equality, and governments that were representative. Understanding this basic conflict is absolutely crucial for answering any question on this period.
This image here gives you a perfect idea of the conservative mindset. It's a caricature called the Club of Thinkers. And as you can see, the members all have muzzles over their mouths to stop them from speaking freely. The plaque on the left even reads, "The most important question of today's meeting, how long will thinking be allowed to us?" It's a brilliant commentary on how these regimes tried to crush any form of dissent.
So, with all this censorship, how did the revolutionaries fight back? Well, they went underground. They formed secret societies to train revolutionaries and spread their ideas. And the one name you must remember from this time is Giuseppe Mazzini. He was an Italian revolutionary who founded secret societies like Young Italy and Young Europe.
To give you an idea of his influence, Metternich himself described him as the most dangerous enemy of our social order.
So you have this pressure building up, right? You've got revolutionaries spreading their ideas in secret and conservative regimes trying to keep a lid on everything. What do you think happens next? Well, of course, things explode. We now enter the Age of Revolutions, a chaotic and exciting period that would eventually lead to the creation of modern Germany and Italy.
Let's look at this timeline of the key events. It all starts with the Greek War of Independence in 1821. Then, in 1830, a revolution in France overthrows the king. This sets off a chain reaction. Remember that famous quote by Metternich? When France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold. And he was right. The French Revolution inspired an uprising in Brussels, which led to Belgium breaking away and becoming independent. All of this built up to 1848, a year when revolutions erupted almost everywhere in Europe. A very important event from 1848 was the Frankfurt Parliament. In Germany, members of the middle class came together and tried to create a unified German nation with the constitution. They even offered the crown to the King of Prussia. But he rejected it. The revolution ultimately failed, and an interesting detail. Look up here in the gallery. You see the women? They were only allowed to attend as observers, which shows you the limitations of this liberal movement.
So if the liberals failed, who unified Germany? The task was taken over by conservative Prussia, led by its chief minister, the brilliant and ruthless Otto von Bismarck. His policy was not about speeches and votes. He believed in a policy of blood and iron, meaning using the army and war. Over 7 years, Prussia fought and won 3 wars. This process ended in 1871 with the proclamation of the German Empire in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. This 4-step process is a very common long answer question, so please remember it well.
Now let's shift our focus to Italy. Just look at these 2 maps. On the left, you see Italy in 1858. It's not one country, is it? It's just a patchwork of different states. Now look at the map on the right. From just 12 years later, it's one unified nation. This incredible transformation is why the unification of Italy is such an important story, and you should be very familiar with what this map looks like.
So, who made this unification happen? It was a team effort by 4 key people. You can think of it like this. Mazzini was the soul of the movement. He gave the original idea. Count Cavour was the brain. He was a clever diplomat. Giuseppe Garibaldi was the sword. He led an army of volunteers called the Red Shirts. And finally, King Victor Emmanuel II became the crown of the new United Italy. All right, so now these new nations like Germany and Italy exist. But how do you imagine a nation? It's an abstract idea. How do you create a face for Germany? Well, artists in the 19th century came up with a very clever solution. They started personifying the nation, usually in the form of a female figure. We call this an allegory.
And here is the most famous example. Germania. This female figure became the allegory of the German nation. The French had a similar figure called Marianne. It's important to remember, these were not real women. They were symbols, created to give the abstract idea of a nation a concrete form that people could identify with.
Now, every little object in these paintings has a specific meaning. Let's decode Germania together. The broken chains at her feet mean being freed. The breastplate with the eagle is a symbol of strength. The crown of oak leaves stands for heroism. She holds a sword, which shows she is ready to fight. But look, there's an olive branch around it, which means she is willing to make peace. This table is very useful because you often get picture-based questions asking you to explain these very symbols.
All right, we have now covered the entire story, from the dream of a nation to the actual creation of nations. But knowing the story is only half the battle, isn't it? Now let's talk about exam strategy, how to take all this knowledge and turn it into excellent marks on your answer sheet.
For any 5-mark answer from this chapter, I want you to use this simple 4-step structure. Step 1, a short introduction defining the main term in the question. Step 2, the main body with at least 3 to 4 clear points. This is where you must use the specific names, dates, and keywords we've discussed, people like Bismarck and Mazzini, dates like 1848 and 1871. And finally, step 4, a simple 1-line conclusion to wrap it all up. If you follow this structure, your answers will be clear, well-organized, and very easy for the examiner to give you full marks.
And that brings us to the end of our revision. The real key to this chapter is understanding the connections, seeing how one event leads to the next. Focus on the key words, the timelines, and the main people involved, and you will be absolutely prepared. All the best for your examinations. You've got this.